Chair, the meeting is now live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to February's Eden District Council Executive Meeting. So I'm Councillor Taylor, and I'm the leader of Eden District Council. And before I start the meeting, I'd just like to hand over to Lisa Tremble, the Council's Monitoring Officer, to take us through some announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This meeting is being hosted remotely as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and regulations that were brought in via the Coronavirus Act of 2020 allow us to do this. The various elements of the regulations are being complied with, in that we allow officers, members and members of the public to participate in our meetings, while our current rules of procedure as set out in our Constitution to continue to apply. This meeting is being live streamed and is also recorded, so will be available to be viewed after this meeting. Just in relation to a bit of housekeeping, if I could remind members, please to keep your microphones off to avoid background noise when you're not speaking, and please only speak when you're invited to do so via the chair. There is a chat function available for technical issues, and there is a 4-hour limit on this meeting, so if we haven't concluded our business within that time, we will have to adjourn to another date. Voting tonight will be via an unofficial recorded vote, so when your name is called, please respond if you are for, against, or whether you wish to abstain from the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Tremble. So I'd now like to introduce all members of the committee, and I'd also like to bring forward agenda item 3, the declarations of interest, at the same time. So when I call your name, could you respond with present and also make any declarations of interest you may have? Thank you. So Councillor Derbyshire.
I'm present. I have got a slight interest in the Patterdale Community Land Trust issue, because I'm also on the Lake District National Park Authority, but in this item I'm acting in my Eden District Council role. Thank you. Councillor Greenwood.
Present, and I have no declarations of interest.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Present, and I have no declarations of interest.
Councillor Ruddell.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Sharp.
I'm present and I have no declarations of interest to declare.
Councillor Tonkin.
Present and I have no declarations of interest.
Yes, and I'm Councillor Taylor and have no interests to declare. So I'd like also to introduce the officers in attendance. Jason Gooding, Interim Chief Executive. Les Clark, Deputy Chief Executive. Paul Sutton, Interim Director of Corporate Services. Lisa Tremble, Assistant Director, Legal and Democratic Services. Amanda Yellowly, Strategic Lead Policy, Performance and Customer Services. Vivian Little, Member Services Team Leader. And Deborah Garnett and Matty Buck, producers for this meeting. Is that everybody who's present? I believe so. So agenda item 1, apologies for absence, so there have been none tonight. Agenda item 2, the minutes. So I'd like to propose that the public minutes E/90/121 to E/102/121 and confidential minute E/102/121 of the executive held on the 19th of January 2021 be confirmed and approved as a correct record of those proceedings. So if anybody has any corrections they wish to make, could you please indicate that you wish to speak via the chat function or otherwise? And I don't believe anybody wishes to speak. So I've proposed those minutes. Does this find a seconder, please?
I'll second Councillor Ruddell.
Thank you. Mrs. Tremble, please could we take the vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Derbyshire.
For.
Councillor Greenwood.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Ruddell,
For.
Councillor Sharp,
For.
Councillor Taylor,
For.
Councillor Tonkin.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimous.
Thank you very much. So we've just moved on to agenda item 3, which was declarations of interest, which we've already made. Agenda item 4 is questions and representations from the public, and there have been no questions or representations received from any member of the public. Agenda item 5 is questions from members, and there have been no questions or representations received from members. Agenda item 6 is the Q3 budget monitoring. And I would like to ask, please, our resources portfolio holder, Councillor Greenwood, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Q3 Budget Monitoring 2021 and Medium-Term Financial Plan. And the purpose of this report summarises the Council's current revenue and capital position and full year projections for the third quarter of 2020 to 2021. So, in line with good practice, budget monitoring is undertaken on a monthly basis within the Council. The revenue and capital position is formulated in conjunction with the corporate leadership team and formally to the Budget Planning Committee on a quarterly basis. It is critical that the Council has accurate and timely budget monitoring information to help inform in-year decision making, to ensure the best use of resources and that value for money is being achieved at the highest level, and this in turn enables the Council to plan in the medium term with the maximum amount of confidence. Since the budget was set in February 2020, the government has provided 4 tranches of financial support to help local authorities manage their finances. In addition to this, they have also provided support through the New Burdens Grants, which is for the works undertaken to deliver the business grants scheme, and a co-payment mechanism for irrecoverable sales, fees and charges income, covering 75% of losses beyond 5% of planned income. The projected financial impact of the funding is set out at paragraph 3.8, and the total of that comes to £1,097,292. And in addition, the government has informed councils that they can phase repayment of collection fund deficits over the next 3 years. In order to fully understand the current position, it needs to be understood that pressures in service expenditure are expected, and whilst they need to be managed wherever possible, funding set out, as I've just mentioned, is provided to manage those pressures that can't be avoided. And this continues to be managed at a high level, given the changing nature of some of the major pressures, such as leisure. The summary position is set out in the table at on the top of page 7, and you can see that there's an overspend. Actual versus profiled year-to-date budget, there's an overspend of £266,000, and the projected outturn in current budget versus current budget, the overspend is projected at £1,073,790. The overall year-to-date position reflects an overspend of £266,000. This is extremely deceptive and reflects both the delay in the receipt of invoices generally, but also the COVID-19 impact on services such as leisure, where the full costs are yet to be seen. And it also highlights the need to use projections to the year end for any financial decision making. So the current projected variance for the year is £1,073,000. The additional government funding of £1,097,000, however, makes the real variance an underspend of around £24,000. So what we have then are the financial positions for Chief Executive, Corporate Services and People in Place. The major anticipated variance relates to the One Eden programme. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic means the savings will not be realised as quickly as had been originally anticipated. There is a compensating offset in that the expenditure to deliver the programme will be less than budgeted, and the overall impact is a pressure of £378,000, the substantial overspend for the Directorate. Under Corporate Services, like many authorities, the Council relies on Treasury management income to support its revenue budget. There has been significant pressure due to the current economic circumstances, which is out of our control, and the current projection is that income will be £85,000 lower than budgeted. The other major pressure is in temporary staffing costs in Corporate Services and Finance, and savings from other vacant posts have been made to partially offset the overall pressure, which is now £47,000. And People in Place, the major variances related to the COVID-19 pandemic are incurred in the People and Place Directorate. The largest of these is the impact upon the Council's leisure contract. Unlike those councils with in-house leisure provision, the Council cannot use the co-payment mechanism to recover income losses under the contract. As has been previously reported, the Council has followed government advice in funding GLL, the Council's leisure contractor, in line with the public procurement note published back in March at the start of the pandemic. The projections included for the contract are to support the provider with the COVID-19 losses to the end of the financial year and create a pressure of £596,000. The other major pressures related to the COVID-19 pandemic are set out below, along with the projected loss. Loss of car parking income, £300,000, increased costs of homelessness, £135,000, additional grounds maintenance, £54,000. There are, though, a number of areas that help to offset the COVID-19 pressures and are also reasons for the relatively low year-to-date overspend. Both development control and building control fees are significantly outperforming their budgets, projected to be £62,000 at the year end. And expenditure on professional fees and property costs across the service are expected to be £260,000 less than budgeted. The new lockdown will undoubtedly create further uncertainty and may well change the position again for the leisure contract. It may also result in additional support from the government. However, at this stage, none is projected. How we continue to support GLL will be a key consideration as we move into the winter months. So, capital monitoring. The detailed capital budget monitoring report for Q3 is set out at Appendix 2. As set out at Q1, a full review of each of the schemes has been undertaken to understand what could or couldn't be delivered in year. This has resulted in a number of schemes or part schemes being reprofiled or removed. This is good practice and ensures a much better and more efficient use of capital resources and helps when considering capital budgets in the future. The current level of spend on the programme is £2.4 million and equates to around 55% of the revised budget, taking account of reprofiling. So paragraph 4.24 shows the schemes that have slipped either in full or in part, and as you can see, Vereda House is on that list. And this Q3 report finishes on the 31st of December, but there is good news, and we can update people just to say that the work on Vereda House has restarted and is
ongoing. So consultation. The draft budget proposals are consulted upon each year and the budget scrutinised by the Budget Planning Committee. The regular monitoring reports to Budget Planning Committee, allowing them to feed forward to the Executive on any matters contained within. And I'd just like to ask Mr. Sutton if any comments from the Budget Planning Committee have been received regarding the Q3 report. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, there were no comments on the Q3 monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Recommendations. The Executive is recommended to note the projected revenue and capital position at December 2020. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greenwood. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Could you indicate through the through the chat function or otherwise? So Councillor Greenwood has proposed the recommendations, and may I have a seconder, please?
I'll second, Chair. Councillor Ruddell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ruddell. Does anybody else have anything they wish to say about this report? So if there is, thank you very much for your detailed exposition of the report and for everybody responsible for the report itself. Thank you very much. So may we take a vote on this? Thank you, Mrs. Tremble. So we're invited to note the report, I believe. Is that correct? Yes.
That is correct, Chair. Thank you. Councillor Derbyshire.
For.
Councillor Greenwood.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Ruddell.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Tonkin.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimously passed.
Thank you very much. So this is agenda item 7, which is the final budget 2021-22 and the medium-term financial plan. So you'll see that this report is in both the resources portfolio and my own. So I'm going to ask Councillor Greenwood to introduce it, but she'll hand back to me at some point and I will then conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the final budget 2021-22 and medium-term financial plan. And the purpose of this report is that Council is required to produce a balanced budget for 2021-22 as the basis for calculating its level of council tax. It has to base that budget on its corporate plan priorities and service delivery requirements estimated for the year, recognising any changes in service demand that may arise in future years. Also, to receive and consider responses to the Council's budget consultation, which was published on the 20th of January 2021, and as mentioned, Councillor Taylor will speak about that. And to update the savings targets to be set through the One Eden transformation programme to deliver a balanced budget at the Council meeting on the 25th of February 2021. The Council sets its budget in order to deliver the strategic priorities and maintain a sustainable medium-term financial future for the Council. In February 2020, before the pandemic, Council set its budget to deliver £1.3 million in savings through the approved One Eden transformation programme
designed to transform the council into a customer-focused organisation operating from a single site. Whilst the strategic priorities and transformation programme remain important, the council has had to adapt to manage the outcomes of the COVID-19 pandemic. Council has had to switch its resources fundamentally to manage during this period, initially to ensure the safety of our staff and residents, and then to distribute the government's financial support to businesses and residents, and whilst that has continued, to operate test, track and trace and enforcement across the district. The pandemic has created significant pressure on council services, staff and finances. The funding provided by the government has helped us manage financially, and we have worked hard to ensure that staff are supported whilst they in turn support our communities and businesses through this extremely challenging period. The council has successfully operated not just most of its statutory services, but has also adapted service provision when the rules have required. Working with the council's leisure operator, Greenwich Leisure, to ensure the leisure centres were open safely during the periods that they were allowed to be, is one example. It is clear that the current pressures will continue into the new financial year. The focus will remain on statutory service delivery and ensuring that the support to our staff, businesses and residents continues as long as it is required. At this point, I just want to mention again a massive thank you to all of council staff for all of their commitment, dedication, hard work throughout this whole period. Eden District Council is massively grateful to everybody for all of their work. Thank you, everybody. The One Eden Transformation Programme has also been delayed due to the pandemic. Work has restarted with new timescales and savings targets, and we are on track to deliver in the new financial year, which I will come on to. Executive produced its draft budget for consultation on the 20th of January this year. The responses to date are considered at paragraph 12. And Councillor Taylor will come on to speak about that. So the final local government finance settlement. The final local government finance settlement was announced on the 4th of February 2021, and there are no changes from the provisional settlement. The table at paragraph 4.2 shows the grants and funding which have been received for the provisional finance for next year, and beyond that it's entirely uncertain and remains impossible to predict. But it does show the settlement funding assessment, the section 31 grants, Cumbria Business Rates Pool, Rural Services Delivery Grant, New Homes Bonus, Lower Tier Services Grant, other government grants, and it comes to £3,830,000. And if you look at paragraph 4.3, you can see a little chart which shows how that falls nationally. The final settlement follows the government's spending review announcement that funding to the sector would increase by 4.6%. The following chart sets out the change in core spending power used to calculate the increase, identifying the key areas where the additional funding would be generated. So the chart shows that the vast majority of the increase in funding would be generated through additional council tax, both increases in the tax base and the Band D. And when the government announced the settlement, they assumed that the funding would increase by 1.7 for the tax base and
2.9% for the council tax, which brings it to 4.6%. So the government built in those assumptions when they said that the core spending power would be increased by 4.6%. Revenue budget. The revenue budget proposals are set out at Appendix A and are unchanged from those reported in January. The capital programme. The capital budget proposals are set out in Appendix B. They incorporate 3 changes from the original programme approved in January. The first 2 relate to ICT schemes approved by Council in July 2020 for the implementation of a new development management system and finance, HR and payroll system. These were excluded from the original proposals in error. And the third relates to a change in the budget for the single site Vereda House project. The Council has been successful in an application for government funding to ensure the decarbonisation of Vereda House. The grant awarded is not 856,000 as stated in the report, but it is in fact 836,000, and the budget has been amended to reflect the increased funding which will finance the additional work required to make the build and building zero carbon. Also, I would just like to mention on page 37 in Appendix D, the Green Business Support Fund, which is the third project up from the bottom, and you can see that there is £400,000 in earmarked reserves for a capital programme for green business support. And this was agreed 12 months ago in the February 2020 budget. So that money has been there all year waiting to be used. And obviously now is the time. So council tax increase. It is proposed that the level of council tax for Eden District be increased by £5 per annum from £195.75 to £200.75 for a Band D property. So that's £5 a year. The chart at paragraph 7.2 shows how that works out for properties in different bands. So Band A properties, the proposed increase is shown per week at 6p per week. Band D is showed at 7p per week. Band D, that works out at 10p a week or £5 per year. And Band E works out at 12p per week and £6.11 for the year. The medium-term financial plan is attached at Appendix C, and it's been updated to reflect the revenue implications of the changes to the capital programme. The funding gap remains the same at £803,000 in 2021 to 22, rising to £1.2 million in 2024 to 25. The funding gap will be addressed through the implementation of the future phases of the One Eden Transformation Programme, which are set out in detail below. So, reserves and balances. The Council's earmarked reserves, general fund balance and capital resources are set out in Appendix D. So the One Eden Transformation Programme and savings target. Paragraph 10.3 shows that the programme has been set up to be flexible in delivery of the savings required to deliver a sustainable forecast for the Council in the medium term. The table shows the current estimated savings compared to the overall savings target required. So you can see that listed here we have single site, Heart of Cumbria, Vereda House, Old London Road, commercial projects
operational delivery of the contracts, HR restructure, and the total comes to £589,000 of savings. The savings target is £803,000, and so the proposed required use of reserves would be £213,088. And it shows the savings over the next 4 years and the total at the far side. So I'm just going to say a bit about the single site commercial Vereda House scheme. A detailed business plan is being prepared for the transformation of Vereda House into a modern zero carbon public service hub designed to secure and future-proof the delivery of quality services to customers in the area, whatever the configuration of local government going forward. This has been used for the calculations both for the pre-tender estimate for capital expenditure as well as the revenue savings achievable. The council has been conditionally awarded £836,000 government grant to fit out the building to achieve net zero carbon in line with our sustainable strategic priority. The commercial income for Vereda House relates to the estimated rental stream that could be achieved through partners sharing the building. Work is underway with a number of potential partners, and the value provides a prudent estimate of what could be achieved in the likely available space. Heart of Cumbria. The Heart of Cumbria Limited is currently under review and will be considered by Council at the meeting on the 25th of February. If the recommendations are accepted, the savings identified would be delivered. Obviously, if they aren't, approved additional savings would need to be identified through the programme. The Council is aware that there are other commercial development and investment opportunities that could be progressed. An example of this is the proposal to build light industrial units at Old London Road. Other opportunities can now start to be explored, which, if successful, would add flexibility into the savings programme. The Council's current waste contract comes to an end in 2022. There is the potential for a different configuration of waste and recycling collections aligned to the emerging National Waste Strategy to deliver financial efficiencies. Development of the National Waste Strategy has been held up by COVID, but government have indicated that consultation on proposals, including details of financial support, is expected to be restarted in the spring, allowing detailed evaluation on options to commence. The timescale set for the saving reflects the earliest that this could be achieved by. And then the HR restructure. The staff restructure is expected to provide a significant proportion of the savings required. Work has already commenced and the first phase is partially complete. The remaining 2 phases are timetabled to be completed in the spring, which will result in the total savings being delivered over a 2-year period, as those in the later phase will only be for part of the year in 2021-22. The savings estimated are a realistic estimate of what can be achieved without reducing the capacity of the business to a point where it cannot function. The use of technology is continually being developed to support the more efficient operation of services across the business. This will be a key consideration as we enter the second 2 phases of the restructure. So, use of reserves. The savings target has been considered over the life of the medium term rather than for each individual year. Given the most significant savings are required in the first 2 years, this helps protect the capacity through the staff restructure. This will require the use of earmarked reserves to balance the savings requirement over the medium term. The Council has sufficient reserves to manage the level required.
Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greenwood. So I'd just like to pick up on it's recommendation 2.9 to note the budget consultation responses summarised at paragraph 12 and detailed at Appendix E. So first of all, the responses received so far to the Council's budget consultations are, as I said, at Appendix E. And these are responses from the public, which will be considered more fully, along with any further responses to the consultation at full council on the 25th of February. So there have been four submissions to date, and I would just like to say that all four of them are opposed to the rise in council tax. I'll just mention, as Councillor Greenwood pointed out, that the interpretation that a Band E properties bill will rise by £75. This is a miscalculation. The rise, as Councillor Greenwood says, is £6.11 over the year. The Budget Planning Committee asked the executive to consider 4 proposals, and I'd just like to mention those here, and of course they can be further discussed at full council. Firstly, that the Budget Planning Committee, do not support the proposed council tax increase. Now, we have considered this, but for many reasons, which again we can debate next week or at full council, we stand by the original balanced budget, which is presented here to executive and which will be presented next week to council. The second comment from the Budget Planning Committee was that Eden District Council should prioritise new ways of generating council income. So if I could ask you to turn again to paragraphs 10.5 to 10.8 in the report, to page 22-23 in the pack, you'll see the ongoing activities described just now by Councillor Greenwood. Now, these are substantial undertakings for a council of this size. 10.9 to 10.11 describe projects in the pipeline and on the horizon, also just described by Councillor Greenwood. So if the Budget Planning Committee, or indeed any other councillors, have any suggestions for new projects, we will of course be pleased to hear about them. Although I have to say that COVID and budget pressures, coupled with the ambitious projects of all kinds that the corporate plan includes, render staff time and other resources very precious commodities, which I fear we are challenging already. The third comment from the Budget Planning Committee was a request for further information on the reconciliation of the budget and the corporate plan. So representing these two documents in the format requested is a significant piece of work. I'm informed that given the lack of modern ICT systems and the ongoing pressures on the finance team and other officers related to the pandemic, this work cannot be completed until the new financial year. Finally, the Budget Planning Committee asked that any rise in fees and charges are limited to inflation. So I'm pleased to inform the committee and everybody that, recognising the impact of COVID, there are no increases proposed in fees and charges for 2021 to 22. So if I could return now to the report and the recommendations in it. So I'm just going to read through these recommendations. There are quite a number of them. When it comes to it, I propose that we vote on them en bloc. If anybody has any objections or other matters that they wish to discuss about any of these items, then we can take them out and regroup. So the executive is recommended to 2.3, approve and recommend the balanced budget to full council as set out in Appendix A. 2.4. Consider and recommend a council tax increase of £5 on a Band D property to full council. 2.5. Recommend the proposed capital programme 2021 to 22 to 2024-25. Recommend that capital programme to full council. This is set out in Appendix B. 2.6. Note the latest medium-term revenue plan, MTRP, for 2021 to 22 to 2024 to 25, as set out in Appendix C. 2.7. Note the impact of the proposed budget on reserves and recommend the reserves to full council as set out in Appendix D. 2.8. To approve the One Eden Transformation Programme savings targets as set out in paragraph 10.3. 2.9. To note the budget consultation responses summarised at paragraph 12 and detailed at Appendix E. So I would like to propose those recommendations to the executive, and I would just like at this point to ask if anybody has any questions on them. So I've proposed those recommendations, and may I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Robinson has indicated she would like to second, Chair.
Councillor Taylor, I will second the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
All the recommendations contained within it.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Officers very much for all the hard work that they've done pulling that together in such torrid times that they're under.
Thank you very much. So does anybody else have anything that they wish to say? I think I can speak on it for everybody that we all endorse Councillor Robinson's thanks. So may we take a vote on this, please, Mr. Trumbull? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Taylor said, we'll take all of the recommendations on block, so you're voting for all of them in one. Councillor Derbyshire.
For.
Councillor Greenwood.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Ruddell.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Tonkin.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimously passed.
Thank you very much. So just moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the corporate performance report from Q3, which is October to December 2020. And this falls into my portfolio, so I shall introduce this report. So the purpose of the report is to provide a summary of progress against the revised corporate performance targets for the period 1st of October 2020 to the 30th of December 2020. It is also to inform the executive and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of any areas of concern or issues requiring attention and the remedial activity in place to deal with those. So this report is nothing but detail and details. And I refer you to section 4 on page 42, which is of areas to highlight. So here, these are areas which have been stressed by COVID or by other matters, I think almost entirely by COVID, but if it comes to 4.3, the local plan, then we have uncertainty around the review of the local plan due to the proposed government, the white paper, and local government reorganisation. We are nothing but not challenged with events. I would just like to I was on a call with, a lot of us were on a call with the MHCLG last week, where the Minister referred to local government as unsung heroes. So I could think of some songs the government could usefully sing to us, but I'll just sing myself a few now. So it's little short of miraculous that services have stood up as well as they have, and that we continue to shape and progress the ambitious projects in the corporate plan. But well, it's not miraculous at all, of course. It's the result of dedication, hard work and professional commitment by everybody, and I would like to thank you all very much. I think things could be improved, of course, and this report recognises that. No one is complacent, and we will continue to rectify slippages, although as a tiny council we don't have a lot of leeway with staff, and again I'd just like to thank staff who are putting services ahead perhaps of their own holidays and so on, and I just hope that nobody actually puts themselves at any risk. The recommendation for this report is just that the progress to date be noted, and I'm going to make that recommendation now. Does anybody have any questions about the report before we enter debate? Because I believe people have things to say. So I can see in the chat, if that's all right, Mrs. Tremble, that Councillor Sharp has offered to second the report.
Yes, can I second the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so now, does anybody else have anything that they wish to say about this report or the contents of it? Thank you. Are you jumping in there, Mark, without so much as a by your leave?
No. I was waiting for Lizzie. She's first up.
Okay. The thing's falling apart. Okay, Councillor Sharp, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to talk about a couple of projects that fit into the community engagement part of the report. Even though progress in the community engagement has been slower due to the added pressures of the pandemic, there have been some inventive solutions to keeping active, connected and creative. We've had the Create Connect Eden working with local artists to produce some community art projects that focused on art and creativity during the COVID-19 pandemic, and has looked at how being creative has helped residents in Eden to cope with the lockdowns and restrictions. The culmination of this project has been an online showcase of the creative work that individuals across Eden have been involved in over the last few months, and there's been some really wonderful and imaginative pieces have been created showing how people have responded with art and found different ways to connect during this difficult time. The second thing I just wanted to mention was our Fit for All community activity scheme. And that usually runs with our partners, the Eden Integrated Community Care, and it runs in Alston, Appleby, Kirkoswald and Shap. And they've had to adapt so that people can still benefit and take part. Our fitness activator who leads the sessions has been regularly checking in with members throughout the whole year via telephone calls, emails and messages. Paper copies of exercise sessions have been sent out to those without internet access. For those able to join in, the Fit for All sessions are now taking place online with virtual exercise sessions and Zoom classes now held twice a week. Keeping our local communities moving and socialising is a priority, and the programme is constantly adapting, responding to changes in restrictions and to those with limited or no internet access. There are plans in the coming weeks to send out exercise DVDs and recordings of virtual walking sessions. I'd just like to mention those two things as some positive bits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sharp. Now, Mrs. Tremble, do I call them or do you?
Next on the list is Councillor Ruddell, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tremble. Yes, Chair, there's been some notable movement on the sustainability side with regards to the sustainability team. We now have Corentin, Adrian and Jasmine, and they're going to help us achieve our goals and aspirations at EDC, making the operations carbon neutral, also helping us to improve the environment, improve biodiversity and build a green economy for Eden. And as Councillor Greenwood has said, we're moving on Vereda House. We now have our own project manager, David Proctor, who's going to be looking after things along with Mike Coulter for EDC. Vereda House will become the new HQ for the council in Penrith and will become a building of national significance, as it'll be the UK's first zero carbon standard office, which will provide greater value for money compared with our current graded listed buildings we have of the Mansion House and the Town Hall. And also not to mention that we've also received grant funding from the government, £836,000 to help us make Vereda House zero carbon. And as was advertised last week, Greening Eden Businesses project, where we're working alongside Cumbrian Business Environment Network, CBEN. This project is aimed at helping our local businesses reduce their carbon footprint. It's a 3.5-year project. We will help them highlight their greenhouse emissions and, with the help of CBEN, identify opportunities to reduce their carbon footprint. And EDC are supporting businesses, as Councillor Greenwood has said, with a £400,000 funding pot that will help businesses become green, and that's been in our capital programme, and we agreed that in last year's budget. So we're now marching on our sustainability and green issues, and we hope to have many more coming along in the future.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ruddell. I didn't like to interrupt. I was enjoying it. A lot of that wasn't in the report in front of us, but I didn't like to interrupt you. So.
It wasn't, but it's obviously we were slow to getting off the mark, and this year 2021 we've actually made great strides, and we will carry on doing so throughout the rest of the year.
All right, I'll buy it. Okay. All right, I'll call Councillor Derbyshire. Thank you.
Thank you. I shall try and behave myself, though the trouble is, even when you talk about things that were happening in the quarter we're referring to going up to December, that now seems quite a long time ago with everything that's moving so fast. But reading through it, it's an interesting document to read. Just thinking of, I usually have a one-to-one with Robert Doherty, and he updates me on what's happening on the housing environmental health front. And it's always, in a way, it's been a roller coaster in the last few months with the numbers of track and trace that people have been having to follow up and try and keep the COVID under control in the area. And I know that Cumbria and Eden have had compliments on the work that they've been doing on track and trace. But at the same time, it's being flexible and people taking on new responsibilities and leaping in to help when more help has been needed on track and trace. I'm very conscious that a lot of people have been getting on with, in a way, the day job behind things of dealing with people who are struggling, they're threatened with homelessness, people who are needing things checking to do with environmental health. All these things have been going on. And at the same time, people have been working on the housing strategy. People have been working on what's going to be called Better Homes, the Home Improvement Agency. We've succeeded in getting the Green Homes Grant. In the period we're talking about, we got the 500,000 phase 1A funding and the Green Homes Grant local authority delivery scheme, and got that set up and got it going. And at the same time did a bid to phase 1B, which we heard in this year, 2021. We got the funding for that. So yeah, it's been great because staff have been flexible, getting on with, as I say, all the work of COVID, track and trace, but also getting on with the day job of helping people and doing long-term projects to improve life for people. So yeah, it's good to read it, and yes, it'll be even more things to be able to say that staff have been achieving in the next quarter.
Thank you very much, Councillor Derbyshire. Is there any? I think that's.
I believe Councillor Sharp has indicated she would like to speak too.
It's okay, I've already spoken. Thank you very much.
Yes, that was Councillor Sharp at the start. Thank you. So I think we are ready to take the vote. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Tremble.
Thank you. So it was proposed by yourself, Chair, seconded by Councillor Sharp, and the recommendation is that the recommendations of progress to date be noted. Councillor Derbyshire.
4.
Councillor Greenwood.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Ruddell.
4.
Councillor Sharp.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Tonkin.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimous.
Thank you very much. So moving on to agenda item 9, which is the executive forward plan. The purpose is to agree the executive forward plan for municipal year 2020 to 21. And this is set out at Appendix 1 and is a list of important items on the horizon, which is available for people to study in the papers which are on the website. So the forward plan sets out the timeline for the executive decisions, including key decisions and council decisions, which are intended to be taken at Eden District Council throughout the municipal year. This is a rolling document which changes, and therefore I won't detail what's on it at the moment. And I will go straight to the recommendation, which is that we agree the forward plan as attached at Appendix 1. We have studied it together before, and I have recommended that. I don't know if there's anybody who wishes to ask any questions on it.
No questions indicated, Chair, but Councillor Robinson would like to second the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to second this report, and it's been a long time in coming to actually get this up and going properly as we should be doing, and I thank all the officers for pulling it together, and it sets the scene for the forthcoming months.
Thank you. So does anybody else have anything they wish to say on this? May I take a vote on this, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is that that the executive agree the forward plan as attached. Councillor Derbyshire.
4.
Councillor Greenwood.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Ruddell.
4.
Councillor Sharp.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Tonkin.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimously passed.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 10 is any other items. I have no items of urgent business and no one has informed me of any. Agenda item 11 is the date of the next scheduled meeting. The date of the next scheduled meeting of the executive is confirmed as the 16th of March 2021. And agenda item 12 is the exclusion of the press and public. And as can be read in the public papers to tonight's meeting, agenda item 13 represents a report considering the application by the Patterdale Parish Community Land Trust to the Community Housing Fund. And since, in accordance with section 100A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, I propose that members of the public, including the press, should be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following item of business, on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 to schedule 12A of the Act. So I am proposing that, and please could I ask for a seconder?
I'll second, Chair, if nobody else will. Councillor Ruddell.
Thank you. Lisa, would you, sorry, Mrs. Tremble, would you please take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. So you are voting on a motion to exclude the press and public for this next item of business. Councillor Derbyshire.
For.
Councillor Greenwood.
For.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Ruddell.
For.
Councillor Sharp.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Tonkin.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That is unanimously passed.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank members of the public for attending this virtual meeting, and the meeting will now go into closed session. So everyone, please could you withhold further comments until it is announced that the meeting transmission has ended. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night.